God made man Lord of his creation, gave him possession and ownership of the world. And you have been so darned lazy that you have allowed the other fellows to run away with the whole world, and now he's bluffing you and telling you that the world belongs to him and that you have no part in it. If black people knew their glorious past, then they would be more inclined to respect themselves. If God has power, then count on me to be the real Marcus Garvey I would like to be. If I may come in an earthquake or a plague or a pestilence, or if God would have me, then be assured that I shall never desert you and make your enemies triumph over you.
My name is Kian and I'm 7 years old.
Hi, my name is Femi. I'm a father of 3, husband to a beautiful wife, and I love history.
History, to me, is learning the past and understanding the present.
I was reading a book by John Henry Clark, and he had a brilliant definition of history. He said in his book that history is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. He said that history is a compass that people use to
find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells of people where they have been and what they have been, where they are and what they are. Most important, history tells a people where they still must go, what they still must be.
People refer to themselves as black. I don't see nothing wrong with that, but black is not really the correct term. You know, black is a color. You don't call Chinese people yellow. You don't call Indian people red. When you address a people by the correct name, when you call them by the right name, that name should relate them back to land, history, and culture. So when you call a people by the correct name, that name should relate them back to land, history, and culture. That's why it's incorrect to really call yourself black. The correct term to use is African. So you are African.
We have overused the word black because black tells you how you look, but it don't tell you who you are. You can call an Italian white. That don't tell you anything about him. We are the only people who seem to have lost that all essential trait.
When people study black history, a lot of people seem to relate black history to slavery. You know, slavery is just an aspect of black history. And something that people don't know is a lot of slaves did not accept slavery. There was a lot of rebellion. So there was a lot of slaves who ran away. There was a lot of outbreaks. And one of the big rebellions was the Stonewall Rebellion, where about 30 guys got their master's guns and just went on a rampage, running away and shooting people. A lot of slaves didn't want to be in this institution. They didn't want to be in the system, so they rebelled and they were willing to give up their lives. A lot of slaves ran away, and this was a regular occurrence. So when you think of slavery, people think of weak men and weak women in shackles. That was definitely not the case. It was a case of these people who were fed up and frustrated with the situation that they were in. So many times there was many rebellions. That's why a lot of the slave masters got together and they welcomed the teachings of a Jamaican white slave owner called Willie Lynch.
And the letter of Willie Lynch reads, "Gentlemen, I greet you here on the bank of the James River in the year of our Lord 1712. First, I shall thank you, the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia, for bringing me here. I am here to help you solve some of your problems with slaves. Your invitation reached me on my modest plantation in the West Indies, where I have experimented with some of the newest and still the oldest methods of control of slaves. Ancient Rome would envy us if my program were implemented. As our boat sailed south on the James River, named for our illustrious king, whose version of the Bible we cherish, I saw enough to know that your problem is not unique. While Rome used cords of wood as crosses for standing human bodies along its highways in great numbers, you are here using the tree and the rope on occasion. I caught the whiff of a dead slave hanging from a tree a couple of miles back. You are not only losing a valuable stock by hangings, you are having uprisings. Slaves are running away. Your crops are sometimes left in the fields too long for maximum profit. You suffer occasional fires. Your animals are killed. Gentlemen, you know what your problems are. I do not need to elaborate. I am not here to enumerate your problems. I am here to introduce you to a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling your black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that if installed correctly, I will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I have outlined a number of differences amongst the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. These methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple little list of differences and think about them. On top of my list is age, but it is there only because it starts with an A. The second is color or shade. There is intelligence, size, sex, size of plantations, status on plantations, attitudes of owners, whether the slave live in the valley, on the hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair, coarse hair, or is tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action, but before that, I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust, and envy is stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. The black slave, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-regenerating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old black male versus the young black male, and the young black male against the old black male. You must use the dark-skinned slaves versus the light-skinned slaves, and the light-skinned slaves versus the dark-skinned slaves. You must use the female versus the male, and the male versus the female. You must also have your white servants and overseers distrust all blacks, but it is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us. Gentlemen, these kits are your keys to control. Use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss an opportunity. If used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful. Thank you, gentlemen.
One of the things that happened when slavery ended was a lot of families had been broken up. There was a lot of ads in the paper of people looking for their family members. You know, aunties were looking for uncles, some people were looking for their mom.
Brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, and all their family that they have.
Because the institution of slavery was a system to break up the family. It was a way of, breaking the human spirit. So right after slavery, when slavery ended, people were just walking about.
After slavery, people didn't know what to do with themselves.
Slaves did not go to school. They were not allowed to learn how to read. Some did learn. And if you were caught teaching a slave how to read, you would be flogged, you could be killed, you would be brutalized. In the institution of slavery, it was very brutal. It was very brutal because it was taught that black people were not human beings. So if they were not human beings, whatever you did to them was okay. So even Christians would persecute the slave because he wasn't a human being.
Spain and Portugal goes to the Pope, the leading arbitrator of that day, the one person in Europe with the greatest authority. The Pope would say to Spain and Portugal, you take the East and you take the West, and you two good Catholic nations start fighting among yourselves. The profound statement before departure, you are both authorized to reduce to servitude all infidel people. The slave trade now had been sanctioned, and Europeans had been told they need not feel guilty of it because you're doing this to an infidel who is outside of God's grace.
When slavery ended, there was a lot of people that were not happy, with the fact that now you've got all these people, who we used to enslave just about. A lot of people didn't know what was going to happen. So in the South of America rose a Christian set, an organization called the Ku Klux Klan. And they were a very brutal group. And one of the things that they're known for is lynching and killing African Americans. So they would burn a cross in front of your house, they would nail your door shut and set your house alight. So you've got the institution of slavery finished, and then you've got this new institution of Ku Klux Klan, a group who went around literally killing black people. So you can imagine the spirit of the people was just down, from slavery to unfair system, and black people generally felt second class. It just felt low, self-esteem low. They were broken people, a very much broken people. So when you were black, society has taught you that you're second class, and you believe that you're second class. You think like you're second class, so you will behave like you were second class. The arrival of Marcus Garvey came from Jamaica, ended up in America. The first time he preached, he fell off the stage. He was not the best preacher, he was not the best speaker. But one thing about him was he was passionate, and he had a revolutionary vision. I think he was trying to start his organization, so he managed to go to certain parts of America, and he got to see how black people were living. And I actually think he just had a different vision. He had a revolutionary vision. He saw into the future. He saw things, and he said things that was unheard of back then. Some of the things Marcus Garvey did was he started a newspaper. He encouraged black men and black women. What you have to realize, back then black women couldn't get jobs. Black women were seen in a negative light. They were seen as nothing. They were seen as rubbish. And what he did, he started a newspaper, he even had a column specifically for women, referring to them as queens, lifting up their spirits. And he went even further, lifting up men, lifting up women, telling them exactly who they were, that they were not second class, that they were first, that they were brilliant, that they were made by the hands of God, and that they should see themselves through the lens of Ethiopia. What you have to realize is people weren't preaching sermons like that back then. This was like a revolution. This was revelation. This was amazing.
Marcus Garvey was a brave man. He stepped up. So for his own ship, his own newspaper and his own business, so they could all go first. And he was a superhero, like Superman.
He went to start a newspaper called the Negro World. And what he did is he took the money from the newspaper and he started businesses. And he started employing people from the black community. And then the black community will spend their money within the black community. And we started a cash flow circulating around in our community. He lifted up the spirit of the people. He created jobs for the people. And he preached sermons that people had never heard, with biblical revelation that had never been spoken. Marcus Garvey said one thing that I thought was brilliant. The pen is more mighty than the sword, but the tongue is more mighty than both of them. And that's a biblical message, you know. The power of life and death lies in the tongue. And not only did he affect blacks in America, his newspaper was going out to 25 other countries. So he was trying to change the world. America fell because of the status Marcus Garvey was having on the people, how he was encouraging them, lifting up their spirits. Money was flowing. They found him to be a threat to national security. So I guess like they do to everyone, Malcolm X, you know, Huey Newton, they sent a man after him called J. Edgar Hoover. Secret police, you know, and his goal was to infiltrate Marcus Garvey's camp and bring down Marcus Garvey. I guess they wanted to literally put him in prison or deport him. That was the plan from when J. Edgar Hoover, you know, stepped on the scene. One of the things he did was he employed the first full-time black agent to infiltrate Marcus Garvey's camp. And all these letters were always signed Agent 800. There's no way you can talk about Marcus Garvey and not talk about the parade that they would have on the street. It was probably similar to Carnival. Marcus Garvey and the Garveyites, that's what they were called, they would dress up in uniforms, army gear, you know, with their swords, shoes polished, clothes pressed, and they would march down the street to show the authority that they have. All the men would dress the same. All the women would be dressed, you know, looking good, lifted, strong black women marching to show their authority in a time when this had never been seen. It was like carnival. You would see people sitting down, you know, sitting on window ledges, looking and watching and thinking this was amazing. They would march, hundreds of them marching. These were people who weren't employed. Now they're employed, they got jobs, they got pride about themselves. Some of them are nurses, you know, they had jobs, they were lifted, they were making a difference. They felt good about who they were because of one man, one vision. He really lifted the people's spirits. He really, really lifted them and gave them pride about who they were. He felt if you lacked your history, there's no way of you knowing where you're going, and you could never have pride about who you are if you never really knew your history.
When my enemies are satisfied, in life I shall come back, or in death even to serve you as I served before. In life I shall be the same, in death I shall be a terror to the foes. Then count on me to be the real Marcus Garvey I would like to be. If I may come in an earthquake or a plague or a pestilence or as God would have me, then be assured that I shall never desert you and make your enemies triumph over you.
I think what a lot of people need to realize is back in Marcus Garvey's time, the image that people had of Africa was African people or African American people with bones in their nose dancing around the pot trying to cook someone or swinging from trees like monkeys. When Marcus Garvey came, he broke that stereotype. He was going around and preaching about the beautiful history black people have that was denied to them for so long. I've always felt the best way to destroy a nation is by the defragmentation of the family structure. And what we learned from Marcus Garvey is building our families and building our communities, building our minds and studying and really encouraging each other, lifting each other's spirits. The man lifted up the spirit of a whole nation, of countries. And we need to remember those principles and lift up the spirit of our community, whether you're in school, university, at work. Lift up the spirit of your brothers and sisters. You know, it's more than history. It's destiny, it's revolutionary, you know, it's what your father did, it's what your forefathers did. It's about lifting up our spirits and caring for others, being your brother's keeper. Biblical principles, being your brother's keeper, lifting up your brother, lifting up your sister, treating your sister like a queen. Ultimately is about self-love. That's the principle that Marcus Garvey was trying to teach. We need to love ourselves. If you don't love yourself, you can't love anyone else. If you don't love yourself, you can't love your family, you can't love your children, because you have to first love yourself and see the God in yourself.
History to me is learning the past and understanding the future.